Okay, ladies and gentlemen, on to our final speaker of the afternoon. And it turns out that there is a slight typo on the screen in front of you. Turns out that Henri isn't a doctor at all. Whether it was like dear Henri Brocklebank that got misinterpreted, but at some stage she surely deserves to be, and if it's not doctor then it'll be Dame. It'll be something along those lines. The name Henri Brocklebank will probably be familiar to most of you. I'm sure that many of you know Henri, and as seems to be the case, that cleanliness of people's online record these days extends, of course, to Henri. There's not a lot there that I could find at all about Henri that you wouldn't already know about her. But on her Twitter feed, there was something that surprised me about Henri. I'm going to show you this. One of the themes that I'm taking away from today is that I think that every year we need to have some cute pictures, don't we? I'm going to have that now as a theme. Every speaker must bring a cute picture. So I was surprised to find this picture on Henri's Twitter feed. Do you remember posting that, Henri? It was your first Twitter post ever. I hope you worked it out. It's dog's noses that look strangely like orcs, and I don't mean bird-like orcs. Yeah. Have a look at your Twitter feed, you'll find it there. When I researched Brocklebank, obviously Brocklebank is Badgerbank, presumably, isn't it? It's a very fitting term. So I did find this. So in my little intros, we've had some stuff that is amazing, like the sharks. We've had some stuff which is unexpected, like chicken in harnesses. I wasn't expecting in Brocklebanks, and let me just say this has nothing to do with Henri, I wasn't expecting to find Brocklebanks associated with la creme de la creme of mouse taxidermy, in which you can buy, should you wish, the Brocklebank family of mice, which I thought was very fitting for us today. They include taxidermied mice wearing binoculars. What? I think we need to come back to saner ground now, and I'm delighted to say that Henri's talk today is Diamonds Are Forever, which is how Sussex Wildlife Trust and Sussex Ornithological Society have worked together so seamlessly over 60 years, and I believe that, Henri, you're going to sing the theme tune to start us off. Henri Brocklebank.
Very much, Adrian. If Adrian had done his research a little bit deeper, he would know that in the Brocklebank mouse taxidermy family, there is actually Henri Brocklebank. So there you go. A little deeper. Anyway, here we are. Diamonds Are Forever. When Mike asked me to do a talk for you all, he said, can you talk about SOS and Sussex Wildlife Trust, how you work together? And so he's like, what's the title of your talk? And it's like, SOS and the Wildlife Trust working together. So I'm going to think of a better name. So, Mike Russell, thank you. Diamonds Are Forever, very fitting because we have both had our 60th anniversary very recently. SOS last year, Sussex Wildlife Trust the year before. So 60 years of both our organisations. So, well celebrating. So what was happening when SOS was first born in 1962? You would have been getting the latest bestseller book, which would have been the latest James Bond book. Cliff Richard was #1 in the charts, and you'd be sitting down in the evening watching a bit of Z-Cars. Average age, not even 71 years old. So times have changed quite a lot. But I'm going to do that bit in the talk, which actually all the talks today have avoided, largely. But I think it's very difficult to talk about nature conservation and the work that we do in the nature conservation sector with the bit at the beginning. So, look away now if you don't want to. So, the bit at the beginning. In 1962, when Sussex Ornithological Society started its journey, it was a different world. And an unimaginable world was the world we live in now, where the world population was less than half of what we have now. And the average temperature, no one had even really probably started thinking about the fact that things on that level were going to be changing, or that one day we'd have a whole generation of children that don't really know what decent economy is all about. I'm one of those children. gets really excited about, you know, a quarter of an inch of snow. And so this generation of children don't know what winter actually feels like. So in 1962, you know, declines have started to happen. So this is tigers. People have been counting wildlife, thank goodness, for many, many years. But 1962 was when the seminal book Silent Spring was published. And actually, I'm going to read you the words on the front of the book. I find them really moving. What we have to face is not an occasional dose of poison which is accidentally got in some article of food, but a persistent and continuous poisoning of the whole human environment. So the soothsayers in the 1960s were starting to get some serious traction. And one of the things that I find in my work at the Sussex Wildlife Trust is there's been this sort of narrative that extinctions are happening somewhere else and not happening here in Sussex. But I'd like to remind you that we get very excited if we have one otter in Sussex. We get excited if we see a hedgehog. You've got, again, a generation of children that have never even seen a hedgehog. They consider it a rare species, but looking around this room, we have all grown up in a time where hedgehogs were very, very common. Let alone when it comes to our children even knowing what a wood white is or a benthic orchid. So extinction and the risks that we have to our species is happening here in Sussex. It's not just the charismatic megafauna of far away. And I suppose when SOS was founded, you know, we were still on the plateau for turtle doves. I shouldn't think anybody really kind of knew what was coming. And just to be really, really simplify climate change about as much as it possibly can simplify, we know that the climate envelope for our species is changing, and that generally speaking, the climate envelope is moving species north. So the basis that we need to work on from that is, Adrian, this is just what you told me what to do. Thank you. We know that the climate envelope is moving northwards for all species. So what do species need? They do not need blockages in the landscape. What they need is to be able to move. And I'll come back to that basic principle later on, because it's the kind of nuts and bolts of what a species does not need is 120,000 new homes in Sussex over the next decade or so, but that's what we have coming. What we're finding is our rivers are flooding more and more often. Is that climate change related? Is that because of the way we are developing our landscape? Is it the way that we're mucking around with the hydrology of our rivers? We're in Sussex. We're so proud of our woodlands in Sussex. Whenever, as conservationists, we meet up with our Surrey colleagues, we have to have a little argument about who's got more ancient woodland. But basically in Sussex, we're so proud of our woodland, but the reality is so much of it is unmanaged, it's full of invasive species. As ornithologists, you know all too well about the narrative of woodland specialist birds. And it's the same for all kind of wildlife within that woodland matrix. I'm not going to dwell on it, but where have all our wetlands gone? Dramatic losses in the UK, in Sussex, in our wetland habitats, and also our critically important net-to-rich habitats. So, in our office, we call this the vortex of existential doom. We all fall into it every now and again because we have to work with some of these issues on a daily basis. So we all have to help each other out of the vortex of existential doom, because it's not helpful being in the vortex of existential doom. And the thing that I use to help myself out of the vortex is this one fact. I've been working in this sector for more than 20 years, and I have never met anyone who doesn't like wildlife. Everybody loves nature, or at least they think they love nature. They may find it inconvenient, they may find that it's a bit frustrating if it stops their plans that they want to do. Some people may be a bit ambivalent about it, but I've never met anybody who actually hates nature, and that has to be a good starting point. And I remind myself of that regularly. So, ultimately, our work as Sussex Wildlife Trust, as Sussex Ornithological Society, we've got our work cut out for us. So that is my very long preamble here on in, I'm going to be talking about Sussex Wildlife Trust, Sussex Biodiversity Society, some of the work we do together, some of the work with the Wildlife Trust that we've been up to, and look forward to future 60 years of working together. So, when we use the term of diamonds as a kind of metaphor for our organisation, why diamonds? Well, they're enduring, and I think having both passed our 60th birthdays, yes, we prove we are enduring. Multifaceted. Just hearing about the awards that were handed out today, you see, there's a lot more to Sussex Biodiversity Society than it's not just recording birds, there's a lot more to it than that. And similarly, the Wildlife Trust is a lot to the Sussex Wildlife Trust, lots of different aspects. And precious. I think every county needs a good ornithological society, a strong ornithological society, and I think every county needs a strong Wildlife Trust as well. So talk a bit more about the work we do. So I'm going to talk about 4 topics: information, influence, some work on the ground, and some of our work in wild landscapes. And I'm going to start off with information. And I'm going to talk about one of the first conversations when I started at the Sussex Wildlife Trust. I think Alan Herring was involved. The question was, can Sussex Wildlife Trust stroke the Sussex Biodiversity Record Centre be trusted with the records of Sussex Wildlife Society? We had a Sussex Record Centre. It was, relatively new, so relatively untested, and the bird records of Sussex, a very significantly sized data set. Could the Record Centre be trusted to look after them? Thankfully, they decided that we were to be trusted. And so the relationship between the Record Centre and SOS began. Now, we have a Biodiversity Record Centre in every county in the UK, and in Sussex I think we have an extremely good one. And the purpose of the Record Centre is to hold biodiversity and associated data on behalf of a whole raft of organisations for everybody's benefit, so it's available when you need it. It's authoritative, it's been sense-checked, it's been working with all sorts of experts. And the Wildlife Trust has the privilege of hosting it. It's funded by a whole range of different organisations that need the data, but the Wildlife Trust is the home, essentially. And it's not just bird data, it's the whole gamut of data from fungi, even but from fungi, amphibian, botanical records, the whole lot, they're all held in the Record Centre. There's 10 million records, species records. It's not just species data, there's also a whole habitat data and other information. And we work not just with SOS. When, in 1999, the SOS delegation came to the Wildlife Trust to discuss the data, that's how many records, about 50,000 records a year were being collected by Sussex Wildlife Society. But look at you now, 400,000 records a year, and we can tell that during the pandemic, SOS members were finding something to do. Now, what happens with that data? What's the point of having all this data? It's not an elaborate backup system for everyone. It's actually got a far greater purpose. And that's to make sure that the data that's collected by all these wonderful biological recorders in Sussex is put to good use. We all want Sussex to thrive. We want nature and biodiversity to thrive. So we need to use that information the best we can. All of these organisations get updated with your data on a quarterly basis, so that when they're making decisions, this is every local authority in Sussex, they've got data on significant breeding birds on their computers, so that it's there and available right at the start of the decision-making process, not too late in the day to actually do something about it. And also we have inquiries coming into the Record Centre, and as you can see, it goes up year on year, so people are really using this information. The majority of it is used in the planning process, and I think that's really, really important that wildlife information is becoming increasingly used in that process. And here is the amazing team that genuinely, joyously, when somebody turns up with a disc with 400,000 bird records on, genuinely is excited and rubs their hands together and says, oh goody, 400,000 bird records, and gets excited about that data coming in. An amazing team. Oh. When the stone chat appears, that means I've got a special SOS thanks to do. So it's an amazing team, plus John Newman. And also Barry Watson. These are two individuals without who the whole relationship with the Record Centre really depends on these individuals at the Trust. So thank you, John, for being our front of house with SOS for so many years. The important thing about the Record Centre, as the world changes, as indeed it's changing, environmental policy is changing, that the data that they're holding is put to new and different uses all the time. And so with the Environment Act that we now have, finding ways to work with our local authorities to make sure that your data stays relevant to the new ways that decisions are being made. So that's all happening. So my second topic is influence. How do we influence decisions that are being made? And I'm sure you're all aware that there are daily decisions being made where wildlife is a loser and not the winner. So how do we get in there and try and change that trajectory? So this is the conservation policy team and my marine colleague George. These guys are working every single day to do that influence. Absolutely amazing team. In order to influence, we're not a statutory body. We don't get notified every time a planning application is doing something awful to wildlife. So we've got to really be mindful about how we do that influence process. So one way is we get in through the local plan process, that strategic mechanism. And when you go through that process, you have to see it through. So we will always generally now end up with an examination in public, really defending those allocations that we think are absolutely not on a wildlife perspective. But these are also some of the bigger cases like the Amber bypass, or most recently there's been a lot of noise about centre parks coming to Sussex, for example. And if there is ever an impact on a local wildlife site or a marine conservation zone, I like to think that you will find the Sussex Wildlife Trust there. So enter the next stone champ, Richard Kaiser. We work so closely with Richard on so many of these issues. It's, you know, he does sit there like another professional in the group. SOS is absolutely represented at the table with the other environmental NGOs. We work very well together, I think, to make sure we're efficient in how we go about doing so. So Richard, thank you. We love working with you. So I mentioned local wildlife sites. Now, local wildlife sites are a really interesting commodity. They cover 5% of Sussex. Most people don't even know they're there. They were designated in the 1990s. They carry a modicum of protection. We'd love for them to have the protection that SI has, for example, but they just simply don't. They have some protection in place. But you know what? We've got to work with what we've got. So let's make sure that our local wildlife sites in Sussex are brilliant and that we look after them as well as we can. Here is the brilliant team that look after the Sussex Local Wildlife Site Initiative. And as I said, they're non-statutory and they have just that small amount of protection. So they might be of national significance, but they never made it as a triple SI. But they will all be of the county significance. It could be for birds, it could be for plants, it could be for particular habitat, etc. So in Sussex we have just over 650 of them, and over 400 of them have been surveyed in the last 10 years. That's what we need to do. In order to protect them within the planning system, we actually need to know what kind of state they are in, and that's what the survey system is all about. So every year we survey another tranche of them, and SOS, again, sit on the panel to help make decisions about which sites go through. We work through a very rigid DEFRA guidance, so that should any of these local wildlife sites get challenged, we can follow exactly this process, and this is how it's a very strict system. And just to give you an illustration, this is just around Henfield, so you can see some local wildlife sites. They're literally a field. In fact, there's one in Hastings, which is just one wall. It's got some amazing plants on it, it's literally one wall. And some of them are really quite extensive. When organising the survey of local wildlife sites, every different colour blue on that map is a different landowner for one copse. And we've got to get permission from as many of those as possible to make an actual survey a meaningful survey. So there's a lot of work to do just to get to survey these sites. And then once they're surveyed, then what will happen is they'll get a full report done, full mapping using proper systems of this DEFRA code. And I'm really pleased to say, let's go chat. So this is another Richard Couser moment, because of SOS, because of Richard Couser sitting on that panel, we have a whole new local wildlife site at Gore and Henri Gap, and we've also got changes to boundaries to existing sites because of the bird interest and because of Richard Couser sitting on that panel. So well done, SOS. So now I'm going to talk about on the ground. So as you probably know, Sussex Wildlife Trust has got nature reserves across Sussex. And I'm going to zoom in to probably the real apex of SOS and Sussex Wildlife Trust history, which is actually the creation of Rye Harbour as a local nature reserve. And it actually was a combined effort of our two organisations and others that pushed it over the line to get that site protected in the first place. So there's a stone out there. I think it was just basically thanking SOS for being SOS. So I think you probably all know Rye Harbour. If you don't, it's absolutely stunning. Really, really beautiful. It is naturally extremely photogenic, an incredible place. And look at that interesting building up there in the corner. So that interesting building used to be the little building that I showed in the previous photograph, London Cottage, and now it is the Rye Harbour Discovery Centre. And there it is. Only opened 18 months ago. Best cup of coffee that a bird watcher can get on a rainy day. You can watch the saltmarsh, the tide rising and falling in the saltmarsh. Really, really beautiful place to be. And as many of you will also know, the manager of Rye Harbour is Dr. Brocklebank, and he's going to be retiring after 39 years of managing this nature reserve. So there's been a lot of passion put into that site over the years, and a lot of it around recreating the saltmarsh habitat. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of his bird highlights of 2022. So avocets. Always very excited about avocet numbers really starting to come up at Rye Harbour. It started about 20 years ago when the Environment Agency bought Rye Harbour Farm, and they started creating saline lagoons, and that's when the avocets started coming back. And interestingly, Barry started telling me about this chap. He's called Bert Axel. He used to be the postman in Rye Harbour Village. And he said, it's all thanks to Bert Axel, the Rye Harbour postman. And actually, Bert, when he retired from being a postman quite young, because of health issues, he went to work for RSPB, he helped set up Dungeness, and also did lots of work at Minsmere. And it's our boom in avocets is because of those East Anglian avocets. They've done so well in East Anglia that we're benefiting from that. So thank you, Bert. It's big enough. And so, very similar to Pete, I'm going to talk about some of the challenging birds that we have on site, challenging in the, because they're difficult to look after. So, spring plover, they're red listed and they are just quietly going down everywhere, but they are holding on quite well at Rye, which is good. We get two types of spring plover at Rye, which I find really interesting. So, we get an influx of tundra ringed plover in May, so if you are thinking of going over to Rye, May would be a good time to do that, to see that. And the reason why they're doing okay in Rye is predator control. We've heard a bit about probably. Because this is the reality of looking after these remnants of these populations. We have fences that even go underwater to stop badgers swimming across the islands. It is real. It is a really, really big deal. But in order for sites like Rye Harbour to be a core to help other sites along, much like Chichester Harbour, you really need to make sure you're doing something for the human population. So just briefly on the term species that we've heard earlier today. So in common terms, actually, we're seeking some funding at the moment for some rafts. So this slow, tragic decline of little towns is heartbreaking for Rye Harbour because it's very simple and it's so emblematic of its own right. Now, Barry thinks that the problem is not enough for them to feed out in Rye Bay. His thinking is that they don't go very far to forage. They don't really go more than a kilometre. Rye Bay is shallow water. It's essentially perfect, but is it? It's artificial underserved, so that's the question. We had some reef bed created in 2003 at Rye, and I believe Sussex Ornithological Society contributed to that. So thank you very much. And these are the species that have benefited from that and continue to benefit from that, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to take you back to this photo and you're going to look at those bright green neon islands. You can see them in that big water area in the middle. So that is the dreaded Crassula helmsii. There isn't anyone who manages a wetland site in Britain who doesn't know what Crassula is. It's an invasive species. It clogs up your waterways. It likes slow moving or still water. We have a real problem with it at Rye. It's invasive species are a massive problem in wetlands sites generally. But at Rye Harbour, we are one of the first places to try the new mite, which is hopefully going to slow down eventually the spread of the Crassula and start to bring it under control. So we're watching that really, really closely. So that's one to come back to this conference with in a few years' time to say, we've got no Crassula at Rye. Anyway, things that Barry Yates has never said. So I'm just talk briefly about some of the birding highlights and some of our other nature shows. So in the far west of Sussex, at Iping and Stedman Common, doing very well. Woodlark, warbler and nutjar. And thank you, Alan, Henri, so another stone chat there. So the SOS and the William Heath Breeding Survey, which we were hearing earlier on about surveys at SOS, these are just brilliantly useful to organisations like us. So, and other birding highlights. Butcherlands is an area next to Evermont Common that has basically been rewilding for 21 years now, and the changes in the landscape have been exceptional. And the description of our reserves ecologists was nightingales at Butcherlands are off the chart. So we heard earlier on actually how well the nightingales have been doing in Sussex, and Butcherlands is certainly an example of that. So yeah, thank you. Survey organised by SOS in 2022. Thank you very much, SOS. I don't know who organises the nightingale survey, but at Old Lodge, one volunteer actually was asking if the site was actually saturated with duck. But this is a combination of really good habitat management and also external factors like climate change. It's not all bad. Milder winters means it's easier for the duck warblers to survive, and that's probably one of the reasons why they seem to be doing so well. So a good year for lesser spotted on themselves and breeding at one of our sites, which is very exciting. And I thought that this is a excellent stone chat to Ken Smith, who did a brilliant talk at one of our conferences about lesser spots. And I think if I hadn't seen that talk, I would never appreciate how significant it is to have breeding lesser spots on one of our sites. So, thank you, Ken. And at Burton Chingford, we've done clearance of big landscape scale projects to work with all of our heathens in West Sussex. And yeah, we're seeing the results coming back. The birds will tell you whether you've been successful. And then, purely to indulge myself in a picture, this is not the one, but very exciting. All aflutter this year with what we've seen, which really people were very excited about that, and understandably so. So, SOS have continually helped Sussex Wildlife Trust with donations. So the ones in red are the ones that in the last 10 years you've contributed to financially. So thank you very much, Sussex Biological Society, for that. And that's £79,000 just in the last 10 years alone, and that's not including any contribution that you've made to Rye Harbour. So thank you. It has made a big difference. So, my final section is about the wilder landscapes. So I'm going to talk about two projects, and I'm going to start off with one of my favourite policies.
These underwater forests are among the most productive places on Earth, supporting a huge range of marine life.
So that's actually David Attenborough talking about Sussex. I've watched that film, I don't know how many times. It's 7 minutes. If you've never seen it, I get goosebumps every time just because it's amazing when you watch Blue Planet and it's Galapagos and it's Great Barrier Reef, and then he's then talking about Sussex. It's just such a thrill. So I'm going to tell you why he was talking about Sussex. I hope that you will know some of this, but it's a very exciting narrative, which of course starts in a hideous narrative. So, in the 1980s, we had a huge kelp forest off the Sussex coast. Here is a map based on survey work from Worthing Borough Council and from Sea Search dives. It tells us where that kelp forest was. And by 2019, this is an extremely generous amount of what was left. So we're looking at having lost more than 96% of the kelp forest in Sussex, to the extent that people go, I didn't even know we had any kelp off the Sussex coast. That's very shocking. So, the Sussex Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authority started what's called a bylaw process. They are responsible for fisheries management, and there was a very strong understanding that the trawling pressure, which is that top diagram, every dot on there is denoting when the trawling activity was taking place, and created a fisheries bylaw to push trawling further offshore, so that the area where the kelp used to be would no longer have the trawling pressure, because as you can imagine, all the time it's being trawled, that kelp habitat absolutely cannot have the opportunity to regenerate. So thanks to the really pioneering work of our Sussex Inshore Fisheries Conservation Authority, or IFCA, we now have this bylaw in place. And in order to promote that bylaw, that is why David Attenborough is talking about Sussex. He was so moved by what was happening here in Sussex that he agreed to narrate a film about the process. And here is the bylaw area. The bylaw has been in place for 20 months, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's been happening as a result of that. So, Sussex Wildlife Trust sits really central to a partnership of organisations, people we've never worked with before. It's been really exciting, like national, international marine experts like the Blue Marine Foundation, the Zoological Society of London, Avon Local councils, universities, and together we formed the Sussex Kelp Recovery Project. But this is a seabed. Nobody owns the seabed. It's not our project. It's everybody's project. There's about 60 organisations that so far have got an interest in what we're doing, and so we all have to stand shoulder to shoulder to go, right, let's make this work. Let's work to some guiding principles to make this the best seabed recovery you could ever have. Ultimately, the aim of this group of organisations is to support the natural recovery of not just kelp, but also other essential fish habitats in that whole geography. And to understand the value of kelp, and to minimise any damaging impacts. So we understand that trawling was a damaging impact, but actually are there other damaging impacts like sedimentation in our Sussex seas? And ultimately increase the support of local communities for everything that's going on, because the reason we lost our kelp was because nobody was paying attention to it, out of sight and out of mind. We never want the Sussex marine habitats to be out of sight and out of mind again. So, survey work on land is something that I'm familiar with, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with just from your bird work. But survey work on the sea is just like a whole new thing. So, some of these points here are where we do grubs, which I'll explain in a minute. We look at environmental DNA, and we have towed cameras, so literally a sledge with camera, very expensive sledge, a very expensive camera, and it does 24 transects, there's that whole West Sussex coast every year, filming what the habitats are. Absolutely fascinating, and lucky students at the Zoological Society of London get to interpret exactly what the habitat types are along our seabed. This is the British Navy, who, when they were doing training for their diving team, they came to Sussex specifically so that for their training they would survey the seabed to look at for kelp habitat. But as I say, survey work out at sea is a completely different ballgame. So this is BRUGs, or baited remote underwater vehicles. But you put some crab meat on the stick and you film it. So here it is. But what you do it at fixed locations, it's fixed periods of time, and you get to see which species are coming in, what the numbers is then go on, what proportion of predators, what proportion of the bottom feeders, etc., etc. And you start to understand over a period of time how the ecology is changing. And this is another really fascinating thing called FARM's autonomous reef monitoring system. But basically, those little boxes are left on the seabed for a year, and we're just getting to the point where they're going to be resurveyed. And we basically look at what has settled on various plates inside them, so we can see what spores are in the water column, so we can understand what the proportion of spores are of which kelp species which are there to create more kelp.
On that slide, what's benthic community?
What is benthic community?
So this is all about people, as always. I'm just going to talk about what had actually happened on the seabed. So we're 22 months in. There's no reported loss of kelp. That's fantastic. There's a huge growth of mussel beds. No one anticipated this. These mussel beds are 1,000 metres wide, which is really extraordinary. And so it's starting to see real change. We've seen reported increase in loss numbers, and sea anglers and worthy reporting a real change. So it's good for fish, it's good for birds. So ultimately we'll see more of that. And then finally, I'm going to talk about one project that we have out in the terrestrial landscape, which Horsham District, when you look at an aerial photo, you could look at this, or you could look at this at the net state. There's a whole raft of what a landscape can look like. But in Horsham, much like my slide right here, we want the wildlife to be able to move. In these challenging times, we don't want blockages for it. We want to create networks for nature. And so that's the whole vision of this project, Wild Horsham District, which is funded for 5 whole years by Horsham District Council, which is not a throwaway comment at all, just mentioning a funder. The fact that a local authority is funding the nature network through their district is unprecedented. I don't know of anywhere else in the UK where this is actually happening. And not only that, we worked with them to produce a map of what a nature recovery network could look like in Horsham District. And after much toing and froing, they have published this. And for those of you that live in Horsham District, and you know what a debacle their local plan has been, actually this is a published document by the local authority, and this is something when we do finally get the next stage of the local plan, we can go, right, how are you measuring your allocations against the nature recovery network? So we have now 2 landowner advisors that are working in the water district with landowners and also with community groups as well, so that those that can contribute to being part of that network of nature, we can work with to help make that meaningful. And this has been really outstanding. This is people that are prepared to change entire farms and how they're operated and really accommodate business nature into their business model on a really epic scale. So some people want to go the whole rewilding. Some people it's just changing their practice in certain areas of their land. But this is about people making change. And sometimes the interventions are very small. And you know, if we can get into a woodland and put in some leaky dams and hold the water up in the woodland and have that woodland acting more as a sponge for our water, then that's a creative habitat. That's a good thing to do. And our local communities are coming forward and getting involved, and there's, like I say, there's been no lack of landowners or community groups that want to get involved in these 5-year projects. It's a really exciting project. And we hope that over the 5 years of this project, we're going to see a landscape that's much, much, much more friendly to wildlife. So I'm going to finish there and say thank you very much to Sussex Wildlife Trust, not just for inviting me, but also for all of the co-working that we've done over many, many years, and hopefully many, many more. Thank you.
Lovely, thanks so much, Henry. I will cover the first question that I did hear while we're in there, which was benthic communities. Yes, for anyone who doesn't know the term.
Benthic community is a seabed community. So a benthic community could be the seaweeds that are growing, or anything from mollusks to sharks.
Yes. Any questions for Henry? Yes.
How far east does the trawler bank extend? Does it go as far as Beachy Head?
Does the trawler ban go as far as Beachy Head?
Yes, the trawler ban does go as far as Beachy Head. In West Sussex, the trawler ban goes out to 4 kilometres, but in East Sussex, it's 0.75 kilometres along the whole of Sussex coast. But you have got a huge marine conservation zone that covers a lot of that.
Next question. At the back, thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about the Wheel to Waves project, and if there's any sort of possibility for the society to get engaged in that, and to what extent SWG is engaged?
Okay, that is about, yeah, if you could.
Okay, so the question was about the Wheel to Waves project, which is a really, really exciting and ambitious narrative, which is literally making a wildlife corridor from the waves, from the kelp forests, all the way up to the Wheel. And this is a vision that's been led by the Net Wildlands Foundation and working with really critical farmers and estate owners along from Climping all the way up to the Arun Valley and up the Ada, and then all the way across the Wheel to Ashdown Forest. And it's getting a huge amount of traction. And through the Wild Ocean District project, we've got a big piece of work working with that Wheel to Waves project. And it's going to be, I think, really show what a meaningful corridor for nature looks like.
Lovely, thank you. I thought that was the Wheel to Waste project, but yeah, we were going to throw away the wheel, but great, we're not. Wonderful. Any more questions for Henry before we finish? Looks like all our questions. Oh, I missed one. My hand, yes. Lovely, sorry about that. So the question is, obviously with a boundary for the kelp exclusion zone, there's nothing marked on the sea for it. How do you keep trawlers from kind of incursions?
This is the fascinating thing about doing work in the marine world. You learn exactly these things. It is really fascinating. So Fisheries management up to 6 nautical miles is done by the Sussex Fisheries Sussex IFCA. All boats that are fishing that are over 10 metres have a GPS on board, so they can be followed. So you will see straight away if one of those boats is actively fishing within the exclusion zone. And in the 20 months that bylaw has been in place, there hasn't been a single incursion, which is fantastic. Plus, I think so many people know about it, that if one of those trawlers comes even vaguely close to the shore, then if we're getting phone calls, I've seen a trawler. So there's eyes and ears on the ground and the GPS.
That's one more yes, gentleman at the back.
The Sussex Wildlife Trust has been involved at Filsham Reef Bed for many, many years. Does it want to expand its appetite and maybe take over management of the Hastings Country Park?
Sussex Wildlife Trust has been involved with Filsham Reef Bed for many years. Would you like to expand your ambition and take over Hastings Country Park?
That's not something that's on the cards. Filsham Reef Bed is a challenging site to manage because of water level management issues. And the window, because of the changing climate, for us to be able to get on and actually deal with some of this growing willow that's encroaching, gets smaller and smaller every year. So Filsham, wonderful site, but a difficult site, and actually it's the broader management of that whole Coombe Valley that probably, if that was looked at on a broad landscape scale, that could actually have a positive impact on the water levels of Filsham. But no, not an ambition at the moment to take over Hastings Country Park.
Well, thank you very much, Henry, for a lovely trek through those 60 years. Thank you for drawing us out of the existential vortex of doom with hope for the future.